Sup guys, I'm here bringing you another guide. Today's guide is on Hanzo, and I'm going to be talking about everything within his kit, his playstyle, as well as tips and concepts that you need to know to play Hanzo effectively. But before we get into the guide, let me just say if you enjoyed the video or learnt something new, why not leave a like and subscribe. It costs you nothing and it helps my channel grow. Also, I know it's been a while since I last uploaded, but I just didn't feel like making a video, and I never want to force myself, so that's why I took a bit of a break. But without further ado, let's get right into the video, starting with his kit. Hanzo has 200 normal health, which is stock standard for most non-tank characters. Hanzo's primary fire is his storm bow. By holding down the primary fire button, Hanzo will begin to charge up an arrow, and when he releases primary fire, he will release that arrow. The arrow will deal more damage and fly faster the longer Hanzo charges it up to a cap. At 0 charge, the arrow will deal 27.2 damage and travel at a speed of 25 meters a second, compared to a full charge arrow which will deal 125 damage and will travel at 110 meters a second. It takes Hanzo 0.75 seconds to fully charge the arrow. While charging the arrow, Hanzo receives a minus 30% movement speed penalty. The charge can also be held indefinitely and can be cancelled by either pressing reload or secondary fire, just allowing you to get more movement. After firing an arrow, it takes Hanzo half a second to be able to start charging another arrow, which means that Hanzo can shoot out a fully charged arrow every 1.25 seconds for a DPS of 100, which is actually quite low, but we'll talk about this damage a bit later in the video. I believe it's also important to remind you that this arrow can headshot and the projectile does have drop. So over long distances, not only will you have to lead your target, you will also have to accommodate for the drop of the arrow, which can make hitting shots with him extremely difficult. Hanzo's first ability is Sonic Arrow. When activated, Hanzo's next arrow will turn into a sonar arrow. This sonar arrow deals the same damage and has all the same properties of a normal arrow, except when it hits a wall or a target, it emits sonar waves that will highlight any enemies within a 9 meter radius of an arrow. This sonar also works through walls, so you don't need to worry about line of sight. The sonar will last for 6 seconds, and if you hit an enemy with the arrow, it will be lodged into them and will travel with them around, making the sonar arrow immobile. Also, if you have activated the ability but have not shot the arrow, you can reactivate the arrow to change it back to a normal arrow, which will refund the entire cooldown. Sonar Arrow has a 12-second cooldown, which starts once the arrow has been shot. Hanzo's second ability is Storm Arrows. When activated, Hanzo gains the ability to rapidly fire a volley of arrows. These arrows deal 70 damage and require no charging before shooting. Hanzo can shoot these arrows at a rate of 4 arrows a second for a DPS of 280. Hanzo has 5 of these arrows, and the ability will last for 5 seconds until the arrows have all been shot, or until the ability has been manually cancelled by reactivating the ability. These storm arrows travel at the same speed as Hanzo's fully charged arrows and have the same amount of drop off as well. Also, another thing to consider is that you can change one of your storm arrows into a sonar arrow as well. It will still do the same damage as a storm arrow, but it will also apply the sonar effect. Storm arrows have a 10-second cooldown from when the ability is ended. Hanzo's third ability is Lunge. This ability is sort of weird as it's the only or one of the only abilities in the game which is bounded to the jump key and is not actually the passive. But when activated, Hanzo will double jump in the direction he is moving. This jump does not provide much additional height, but is instead great at getting away from threats along the horizontal plane. To actually activate this ability, you first need to be in the air. Then, as long as the ability is off cooldown, pressing jump will make Hanzo lunge in the direction he is moving. But the lunge will have a 4-second cooldown once used. Hanzo's ultimate is Dragon Strike. When activated, Hanzo will channel for 0.9 seconds, and in that time he can look around but cannot move, and then he will shoot. After 0.6 seconds, that arrow will transform into his iconic twin dragons that travel forward, dealing massive damage to everyone in their path. Now, there is actually a lot that goes on with Hanzo's ultimate, so there is quite a lot to talk about. First things first, each dragon actually has their own unique hitbox, and as such they each individually deal 150 damage a second. So, In the middle of the ultimate where the dragons interlap, the ultimate will deal 300 damage a second, and I personally had no idea about each dragon dealing its own damage, but it's actually really important as at the edges of your ult, you'll only be dealing half of what could be being done at the center. Now that we know the damage, let's go back to the casting of the ultimate, and all the things that can go wrong and can go right before the dragons come out. In the initial 0.9 seconds of casting time, any stun will cancel the ultimate, so make sure you're safe. Then, once the arrow has been fired, the ultimate still can be cancelled or worse. If a Sigma or Dima eats your arrow, it gets cancelled. Or, even worse, a Genji can still reflect your arrow and the ultimate will become his, firing back at you. Another thing about the arrow is that it actually does normal damage of an arrow, meaning that it can kill people. Now let's move on how the ultimate moves. Once the arrow transforms, the dragons will continually go on the same linear path that you aimed for. The dragons will travel through terrain and go through the entire map if you aim it that way. The dragons will move at a pace of 20 meters a second, which is just over twice the player's speed. If a target is completely stationary when the dragons pass through them, they will deal damage for exactly 3.33 seconds, which means if they are in the center, the dragons will deal around 999 damage, or if they are around the sides, it'll deal around 499. Okay, I think that is everything for his ultimate. Now, we're almost done with his kit, we just have his passive left now. Hanzo's passive is Wall Climb. This passive allows him to hold jump while facing a wall and allow him to climb up to 4 meters high. It's a nice and a simple passive that allows Hanzo incredibly easy access to high grounds. Whew. Okay, I promise that it's everything with his Hanzo's kit. I personally did not expect his ultimate that requires so much talking about, but it actually has a lot going on with multiple stages and hitboxes and stuff, so hopefully that clears everything up for everything you need to know. But at the moment, Hanzo is currently one of the best and most reliable spam damage characters, and is really consistent if you want to constantly put damage down range and apply kill pressure at all ranges. With the damage burst of Hanzo, hitting a headshot followed up with storm arrows will make any tank shiver, and fighting a Hanzo is something most DPS characters would rather avoid. With his sonar arrow, he can easily scout out positioning and the pathing of the enemy team, and he can utilize his own mobility to ensure that he has the best vantage point for the fight, just to constantly dish out damage and stay safe. Overall, he's a very versatile character that you generally can't go wrong with, assuming you can actually hit the shots. But let's start to delve into the concepts and tips that you should know when playing Hanzo. First off, I know that I've said that Hanzo has a lot of damage, but he really doesn't have the best DPS, with it only being 100 per second. So why is he considered a high damage dealer? It's because of headshots and burst damage. It takes Hanzo 0.75 seconds to fully charge an arrow and one-shot any non-tank character in the game. And then even if you are a tank, he can easily take that first shot. He can follow up with 5 storm arrows to confirm the kill. You won't constantly be shot by Hanzo as he slowly lowers your health, but you will constantly be swiftly executed by one arrow and a volley of storm arrows. It's this threat of instant death which makes him so potent. And most of the time, Hanzo will just spam these arrows in the direction of the enemy, hoping that one will land and it'll find the damage needed to start fights and get kills. Despite the fact that Hanzo is a sniper character, he actually has some of the best mobility in the game. His wall climb will allow him to get easy access to high grounds, and his lunge allows him to close the gap or put more distance between foes. You need to utilize these abilities to properly position yourself and not to get killed. Even though Hanzo is best used in mid-range, he is still lethal at all ranges, which means that if a Winston was to dive Hanzo and he wasn't able to fully get on top of him, Hanzo would be able to lunge away and just walk from the monkey and his bubble, and most of the time the monkey cannot follow you because of the raw burst and kill potential. This is the same for almost all threats that would want to close the gap. As long as you can see them coming and immediately put some distance between you and them, engagement should always lean in your favour, as you still have your lunge to get even further away, even if they still get to close the distance. Let's talk about using your ultimate correctly on Hanzo. It's one of those ultimates that can be very easily used incorrectly and get completely wasted. First off, let's talk about the tried and true combo of Grav Dragon. Combining Dragon Strike with Graviton Surge will almost guarantee to kill anyone that gets caught in the Grav, But what if you don't have a Zarya to combo with? What should you look to do? Dragon Strike is quite often used to just zone enemies away and control the battlefield wherever it's used, as it will cut off the battlefield in half for a couple of seconds, making that part of the map untraversable for the enemies. The most reliable way to utilize this is map control. It is to send your ultimate just behind where the enemy tank line is so that it splits the other team up with their tank line unable to back off while you engage onto them. Using it to prevent retreats is also the most reliable way to guarantee value, but it won't guarantee kills. So just make sure you aim the dragon where the enemy wants to be rather than where they are, and you'll see immediate improvements in how effective your ults are. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's everything I wanted to say with Hanzo to allow you to start playing him, but if you enjoyed this video or learned something new, why not leave a like and subscribe. I have no idea when my next video will be or what it'll be about, so if you've got any ideas you want to see something, leave it down below and I'll probably have a look at it. But till next, see you then.
My phone lights up, but it's never you. I can't help but feel so lonely. And all this
Put that in the video.
Cut it.